Hello, my name is Thomas Hayat, and I'm here in beautiful Portland, Oregon, where it tends to rain a lot, which is why I'm doing this video kind of indoors and outdoors, because I needed to show the outdoors that in nature, trees do not have a single branch that is straight. Nature doesn't do straight, nature does curves. And so that's what astrology is. To occult is to observe nature. That's what paganism means, by the way. Paganus, from the Latin paganus, which means the worshipping of nature. And in the larger environment sense, the stars and planets. Now, what's beautiful about this rain is that it is cyclical. You know, if you notice and you live in Oregon long enough, you will see that the wind always moves the branches before a storm, and anywhere in the world kind of thing, you know. After the wind comes the rain. After the rain comes the sun and the sunlight to illuminate the beauty of the grass and all the colors of the flowers and everything. And if you look on a zodiac wheel, it is pretty much the same idea, you know, that you will have the air first, the wind, then comes the water, the rain, then comes the fire, the sun. Leo is governed by the sun, by the way. Then comes the earth, and again the cycle starts again, because there are 4 elements, and 12 divided by 4 gives us 3, which brings me to my next point, which is time division. This is the clock of my great-grandfather, Gabriel Charles Hayat, who was an Aquarius like me. And this clock was passed down to his son, and then to my mother, who was an Aquarian like me, and then now to me, now that she left us to her great reward. And that 12 and that 3 that I just mentioned, I want to bring something to your attention. In ancient Greece mythology, let me change spot because the light is not all that great here after I made that point with the branches. Let's move over here where we might be a bit better. Okay. So, some people tend to say that there is no science behind astrology, that it is just made up and there's nothing to prove whether it is true or not. And so I've spent the greater part of 30 years studying whether or not there is truth behind astrology. And lo and behold, when we study Greek mythology, Chinese mythology, history, human history, and we look at the cyclicality, the cycles of how often things happen, we can't help but see that there is a relationship between those two things. And so what proof is there behind astrology? What is the definition of astrology? It is the effect of celestial object on us on Earth. So if we use a calendar, we're basing our calendar off of the motion of the Earth around the sun, which takes 12 months in a 52-week calendar. So that in itself is already a first use of the astrology and a first application of it. That came about in the Greek mythology when Kronos, the father of Zeus, regurgitated the stone that is at the Oracle of Delphi, that is still there today. Actually, you can see it there, and that's where the 7 wisest men of the area, including Thales, the instructor and teacher of Pythagoras, and Thales was said to have invented or divided the zodiac to invent the seasons, the cycles. And the discussion at Delphi back then was about the golden tripod of Helen of Troy, who was supposed to go to the wisest men of them all. And each one of them declined it, saying that the other was more wise. And we have 7 men at Delphi trying to decide about a golden tripod to whom it should go, and they decide that it should go to Helios, the god of the sun. And effectively, the Earth takes 12 months to go around the sun. So in essence, they had an alphabet of 24 letters. So that fits on a 12 wheel, because you can even break it in smaller pieces and you would fit 24 letters. How do I know this? Because in reality, here, this is an Arabic astrolabe. As you can see, it has 28 sections, and in each one of them there is an Arabic letter. So that means that the alphabet is based off of astrology. And how can I further prove this? Recently, I've been seeing a series on, I don't know if it was Amazon or Netflix, but that series was regarding the Mayan astrology. And they figured out that they could decipher the hieroglyphs by looking into it in the order of how did their zodiac worked. And it turned out, it turned out that in the Mayan zodiac, they were following Venus. And that's why it was a base 20 zodiac. They still had 365 days to a year, but they had an extra wheel to their engineering of 13 teeth that every 4 cycle would reset. So 4 times 13 is 52, would reset their calendar to 0, the same way that our sun calendar resets to 0 after 52 weeks. And so that's pretty important. And then the other thing is, why would they follow Venus of all things? Well, you have to keep in mind the topography, the terrain of where they lived. The Mayan lived in the mountains like the Aztecs and the Incas. And so in the mountains and in a tropical area, you can be sure that 6 months out of the year is going to rain. So it's going to be cloudy and difficult to observe the stars. However, there's one guarantee when you live at the top of those mountains. In the morning, the mist and the heavy water will be below. And before the sun rays get all that water to rise, the first thing you will see in the sky every time you wake up is Venus. So it's a lot easier to base your calendar off of that and the moon, rather than try to follow anything else in the sky that may be obstructed by clouds. And that's why they followed that. In the Arabic astrology, following the moon made more sense, because 28 divided by 4 gives you 7. It was an easy number to work with. And in the golden ratio of things, if you really look at it, 7 and 12 are really made up of the same numbers, 3 and 4. And for the Christian, this number also has a Holy Trinity sacred value to it. So there is a alphabetical order to things just connected to astrology. And I'm going to make videos about that to prove that it's not just to prove for the sake of ego, but just to show that we cannot just go by being impressed by NASA, who says there's a 13 constellation, therefore we vilified astrology and called it a bullshit science forever. But now that we've been belittled by one single guy, Elon Musk, we're going to make astrology our new income and create astrology zodiac wheels with 13 signs. Well, you want to change the clock also to 13 hours instead of 12? There is a good reason why it was made that way. It's because 12 is the common number to most every planet, where 13 really not quite. 13, you may have 13 constellation. Mars also functions with 13, because 13 times 2 is 26, and Mars takes exactly 26 months to go around the sun. That's the basis of the war calendar and the war machine of the Roman Empire, with its 26 alphabetical letters. And it's an empire that's been at war for most of its existence. Do we want to follow that type of calendar, or the Mayan calendar of a people that were mainly at peace? Or do we want to follow the lunar calendar? Do we dismiss one object in the sky for another? I don't think we can do that. They all exist with the same value, and they all exist with a purpose. Just as each one of us exists for a purpose, there are historians to explain history, there are mathematicians to explain mathematics, there are astrologers to tell you about your personality traits, and there are people like me who investigate the connection between science and astrology, and then we'll give it to you simplified so that you can actually make sense of it all without being told that it is a pseudoscience. It is the mother of all science, if anything. And that's what I've learned in my long learning experience. I've had to close my mouth and listen to people speak and make the difference between what was true and what was not. And it is your job to also take everything I tell you with a pinch of salt. Check it for yourself, see if it makes sense or not. If it doesn't, then hey, that's fine. You know, I'm not here to convince you. I'm not trying to sell you a cult or collect money from you. Although I'm making this education for free, I would appreciate some donations, because I do have teeth that need fixing and other issues and investment I need to make. So it's a give and take relationship. Otherwise, if it's just going to be you take, ultimately at some point in time I will stop sharing. I will be making a book about all this, and it will be tied up more objectively than the videos that I'm making. But the videos will have QR codes so that people can access knowledge easily and hopefully freely. But again, as I said, it's a give and take. Thank you very much for your time, and if you find this information useful, as always, as Chief Sitting Bull said, knowledge is useless until it is passed on. So pass it on. Have a great day. Take care.